Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Eye on the Ball. I'm Steve Rivera, and you're listening to 1030 The Voice. Today, I start a weekly series for the next few months. We're not sure how many months, but I'm glad to have Mr. Bill Spurbeck of CPR2U involved in this big project. It's mostly about hearts, heads, concussions, whatever else. Tell me, what else?
Yeah, so what we're going to try to do is each month is focus on a particular sport that's in season and discuss illnesses, injuries, and things that might come up during that particular sport, and not just focusing on adults, but a lot of us have children, grandchildren that play in the local little leagues and stuff like that. So.
Right. We had him on about 3 weeks ago, a month ago, whatever it was. It happened so quickly. It was pretty popular, and you decided to come on as a nice sponsor and to talk about this on a monthly basis. So we'll have you probably more than that, actually. We'll have Sean Kimble, who works with CPR2U. What capacity, Sean?
I'm the Chief Operating Officer.
Chief Operating. And then Mike
Balta, yes.
And you are, again...
the Business Relations Manager.
You talk more right now than you did last time you visited. I'm glad to have you, Mike. Good to have you. Hey, you know what? This is a dumb question. Let's start with the dumb question for me. I was watching some old videos of baseball back in the day. I can't tell you the era, before 40s, 50s maybe. No helmets. No helmets. They did not wear helmets. What was up with that? What were they thinking?
Yeah, they weren't.
I don't even know when they switched to helmets, but they must have had some serious injuries back in the day.
Yeah, and I like to talk about, they call them the book of mistakes. It's typically when you look at legislation and like rules of the ocean, stuff like that, usually something happens, somebody gets injured or hurt, and then we go back and we look at, somebody's getting hit in the head with a baseball going 150 miles an hour, getting knocked out. Maybe it's time to put a helmet on.
Mm-hmm.
I just finished up Joe Namath's new book, and he was talking about back in the day, back in the 60s, as far as concussions and getting his bell rung and using the old, as they call it, smelling salts and stuff to wake him up. And through technology and medicine and research, he was talking about now they're using hyperbaric therapy, the hyperbaric chamber therapy, and he did it for 12 months and actually regained blood flow to the part of the brain, and it's really worked.
I need to get in one of those then.
Yeah.
I need that kind of help. How was that book? Good?
Very good book.
He's a recovering alcoholic, correct?
Yeah.
That's what he wrote about?
Yeah, it was about 16 or 17 years now recovering. In fact, what caused him to go into recovery is, I think it was a Monday night game years ago.
I remember it very well.
Where he tried to kiss the
Susie Colbert.
Susie Colbert. And he decided that was the time to stop drinking.
Right. You make enough stupid mistakes. Finally, people say, shut up already and get it solved.
Yep.
So tell me, Sean, you're a former athlete?
I am.
What sport?
I was football, baseball, and basketball.
So do you ever get hit in the head or hit badly?
I've had my bell rung a few times playing football, so absolutely.
Yeah. I'm missing my 2 front teeth. I got a bridge now because of football. Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah. Mike, you have any exciting stories?
Nope. Other than getting ahead all the time by Bill.
Luckily, he doesn't hit hard.
Well, Bill lost his in football because he was playing back before they had helmets. So.
Helmets, yeah.
Yes. So you guys got into this for all different reasons. Let's start with you, Mr. Bill.
So my reason with regards to the medical field and now the CPR business is being the paramedic. Last year started 37 years and teaching CPR since 1983. And I truly believe that learning CPR does save lives. And then just 4 years ago, my brother was going into cardiac arrest in a restaurant here locally, and nobody doing CPR on him. So in 1983? No, that's why I started teaching.
Right.
My brother was 4 years ago.
No, but 1983. Let's see. Of the population back then, what percentage knew how to do CPR?
Very, very little.
Very few. Now?
Typically, back then, it was just a medical professional taking a class. Today, right now, the Heart Association says that in a typical population, about 12% of the population is trained in CPR, and that includes medical and non-medical professionals.
And that could be, the number should be about 20, should be a lot more than that.
Should be more than that, and we discussed the last time on the show, beginning July 1st of this year, in order to graduate high school in Arizona, you have to take a CPR class. So, yeah, the numbers have definitely increased. Somebody had sent me a picture on Facebook a couple of weeks ago where they actually have a practice mannequin In airports now, while you're standing around at the gate waiting to get on an airplane, here's a mannequin practice.
Uh-huh.
So it is definitely increasing.
For you, Senor, how did you get into, Sean, how did you get into this business?
Well, actually, I'm a local retired fire paramedic. So I served at one of the local jurisdictions for over 25 years. So I retired, and Bill called me and said, hey, I'm starting this up, and I believed in the process. So I came on over, and he said, teach a few classes, and I did that at one of the local hospitals that we were running out of, and after that, I just kind of been here for about 6 years now.
Yeah, right. Okay, and Mike?
I retired a couple years ago from AMR, but I've got 35 years fire and EMS. Started with the Air Force as a firefighter, as a volunteer firefighter before that growing up, and went through a couple local departments, and then came over once I retired from AMR. Bill called me up and said, come join us, and started out teaching part-time for him, and now we're here, all three of us together as a group.
What's been your, Mike, and I'll go through all three of you guys, the biggest injury or situation on the field, baseball field or otherwise?
It has to be when we were playing, when we were doing medical coverage for the U of A games, and we had a couple injuries through there. One of them was a cheerleader when we played California, and one of the fans threw a full water bottle.
Oh, I heard of it. Basketball?
No, football.
Okay.
Football. One of the fans threw a full water bottle up from about the 40th row and hit her square in the head and knocked her out.
Wow.
Completely.
What was the seriousness of it? What was the...
She got knocked out, and she had some effects for about a year or two afterwards. We checked up on her, and we had to carry her off the field, and that's when all the fans were throwing water bottles, and U of A PD and the security had to form a V just to get her loaded onto the golf cart so we can get her out.
Did they find the person?
Oh, yeah.
They did?
Yep.
Oh,
yep,
good.
They found the person. I don't know what the outcome was, but they did charge him.
Did she continue to be a cheerleader? I mean, that's traumatic.
Yeah, that's very traumatic, but I don't know what happened to her.
Yeah, wow,
to be honest, but
I remember somebody getting hit in the basketball arena, not in the football arena.
Yeah.
You don't hear about that stuff.
Yeah,
You hear about stupid people streaking in the field. That's what you hear about. Sean,
Yeah.
for you, what about the worst?
Well, I actually coached high school football at one of the local football locations, and so I had two really. We've had a couple that they had head injury that actually knocked them completely unconscious, where we had to put them in what we call full C-spine precautions, which meant the board and the collar, and take them in. And the other one too, look-wise, was we had what we call a compound fracture, where it was down below the knee. The tib-fib bones were sticking actually out through the leg. So
Ow.
yeah, so it was a couple of them.
Before we go to you, Bill, let's go to a phone call. Alejandro. How are you, Alejandro?
Yeah.
Thanks for calling in.
Fine. Does the gas prescribe to the U of A philosophy of just chest compressions and not rescue breathing?
I'm going to take that.
I can take that. So there's been studies obviously done by our own U of A that's over here. And to answer the question, Alejandro, this is Sean. So we've looked at a lot of the studies that have come across there, and what they've done over the last couple decades is we're trying to get as many people involved in doing CPR. And when you do compression-only CPR, what basically happens is you're doing also what we call passive breathing. So you're doing the compressions that's getting the blood to circulate around in the heart, which you can do by compression only, and you're also getting what we call passive breathing. The only thing that is an issue with this, the compression-only CPR, is for folks that are found down in water. They're going to need the ventilation part of it, but for the most part, yes, we do agree with the compression-only CPR that's being taught and researched by the U of A.
So we expect...
Okay. And I'm from Nebraska. We didn't have water bottles. They were oranges.
Right.
And they co-cocked a policeman on a field. So
Sure.
Yeah.
let's not throw anything out in the field from our stands.
Sure.
So are you a big Red fan?
10-4.
There you go. Well, we can convert you to Wildcat country, so no problem.
He wants to stay a
I've been
winner.
going to Wildcat games.
There you go.
Yeah. So I got an interesting story with regards going back to sports. So
Yes.
I got this is going back in the 80s. I got dispatched to a shooting. We get to the house and there's a couple young kids that were playing with a BB gun, and he shot his brother, lodged a BB right below his eye, and so we said, "Where's your parents?" And they said, "Oh, they're at High Corbett Field." So we tried to get hold of the parents, and about 5 minutes later, the mom answered the phone, And they were right. They were at High Corbett Field. It was actually the Indians were here spring training, and it was Julio Franco's son that had shot his little brother. And so we met him at the hospital. Julio wasn't too happy at the time, but actually showed up in his Cleveland Indians uniform. And
I remember him very well. He was an infielder. He was
Yep.
a pain in the neck to me. I remember the spring training. Yeah, he was about 30-something.
Something. Yeah.
Good
I mean,
infielder.
Yeah.
Pain in the neck, though.
And the last story was, and I'm just going to talk about this real quick, is I was back visiting my grandchildren in Illinois last week, and we decided to drive down to St. Louis and visit the Anheuser-Busch, the brewery.
Mhm.
Well, in 1983, I got dispatched to a rollover up off Kimble, just north of the river. We get there, and here's this nice black Corvette on its roof, and about 5 yards from there was a girl. She was deceased. She got ejected from the vehicle, and the driver wasn't around, so we kind of searched around the desert area, looked, and found nothing. We got back to the station and got redispatched about 10 minutes later to a house, and we get there, and here's this belligerent kid. I think he was 18 or 19 at the time. Kind of a long story short, it was Augie Bush IV, the Anheuser-Busch boy.
Oh, well,
Well, the
But
next
he didn't
day,
get in trouble, did he?
no, the next day he was flown out
By a
of
team
town.
of lawyers.
Yep, the blood was lost, and he was flown out. So when I was back there doing a tour last week, I told a story to a couple of the tour guides and stuff like that, and they kind of got a kick out of it.
did you hear this, Bob? I guess you knew the story.
I know it a little bit more firsthand. I knew somebody dating one of the family members,
Yeah, it was
one of the Bush girls.
Augie Bush is actually number 4. He's the one that has been kind of running the brewery.
Uh-huh.
And and the tour guide was telling me too, is a couple years ago, he got in trouble because he's also got his helicopter license, and I guess he landed a helicopter drunk in one of the neighbors' yards.
Okay.
Some-
Okay.
King of beers.
Well, a lot like your teenage years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was on Pepsi and
Run the yacht into the neighbors.
Yeah.
sure,
Just common stuff.
Sure. I used to walk home back, 3 miles. So
Well, they didn't have cars. So.
that's true. Back in the day.
Uphill both ways.
So, what was your biggest sports besides that injuries at the?
Who I took care of probably sports-wise is Craig Biggio. Back,
Toros?
well, yeah, he went to Toros and ended up at the Astros. He
Yeah.
was down here spring training and ended up breaking his femur, the long bone in the leg.
That
And,
must have been like 80s, in the late 80s.
Yeah. It was actually about, I think it was probably middle, because going to college. So somewhere in the 80s, but yeah, I ended up transporting him. He tore his leg up pretty good.
Yeah, because he played here with the Toros in the
Yeah,
late 80s.
yeah, and yeah, he went to the Toros and because the Astros were the
Yeah,
the Toros were the
the
farm
main team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah.
did you guys all work with the Toros with that?
I
you-
did some standby work back with the Toros back in the 80s.
So more, I'm sure you had a lot of stories involved then.
yeah, more of fan stuff than actual athlete
Mm-hmm.
stuff, but those are the two ones I remember. Because they had their own athletic trainers and
Sure.
stuff like that. It's not too often that you'll transport or handle that type of emergency. Is usually because they have their own staff or physician on staff.
Right.
stuff.
You see, and we talked about it, we'll go to break in about 2 minutes, but you see baseball players, pitchers specifically, get hit on the comeback.
Yep.
The
Mhm.
pitch, the pitch 95 miles per hour going, another 100 and whatever coming back
Yeah, I was
to
telling you, they say about 2.5 times the speed once it hits the top of the bat. So if they're throwing 90 miles an hour, it's well over 200 miles an hour. It's coming back.
And now you have the projections on ESPN all the time, bat speed and ball speed
Mhm.
leaving the arena. So and they get hit. Some don't get hurt, obviously.
Yeah.
They get hurt, but some do. If it hits in certain areas, that's the key.
Yeah, especially the head, and we can discuss this after break because we'll go into a little detail about it. But it's becoming more and more of
Issue. It's
an issue now, and then some of the major league teams now putting up fences to. I think there's 3 teams right now. I heard that to have fences all the way to the outfield, and a couple others are looking at it. They're actually talking maybe by next year that all the teams will be required to have a fence to the outfield. And I mean, there's pros and cons to it. People want to sit near the infield, but again, when you got a ball coming 200 miles an hour,
Sure. And little kids getting
little
hurt. That's
kids
kind of
and- yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we can discuss that after break and
right.
what to look for. And
Well, let's do that. Let's
Okay.
take a break here, Bob, and then come back and talk more about injuries, stuff like that, accidental and otherwise, here on 1030 The Voice, Trusted Local News and Talk. Hey, welcome back to Eye on the Ball here on 1030 The Voice. I'm Steve Rivera, and I'm here with 3 gentlemen from CPR2U, Bill Spurbeck, Sean Kimble, and Mike Balta, talking about sports and injuries such as they happen to be accidental and otherwise. So tell me, we're talking about the bat and the ball hitting the pitcher quickly. You have to have those reactions.
Yeah, the reaction of not only the players, but just as important, or actually more importantly, is the actual fans, because they're unprotected. You know, the pitchers and the ball players, A, typically have pretty fast reflexes. B, they have gloves. And so they're always paying attention to that. But you're sitting in the stands, you know, talking to your neighbor, or, you know, someone watching the game, and all of a sudden you got a ball at 200 miles an hour coming at you. And so what do you look for with a head injury? And it was interesting, the one that just happened last week with the little girl. She actually stayed, I think, 8 or 10 minutes before they decided that she needs to go to the hospital. And our recommendations, and Sean can hop in here, Mike can hop in here, with any type of head injury is get evaluated. You know, head injuries can be acute, where you'll start seeing signs and symptoms in a matter of minutes, but you also got head injuries that take up to 24, 36 hours before you start seeing signs and symptoms. So you got something, a projectile going that fast, you need to leave the game and go get examined.
Yeah, especially when you get hit that hard, your brain can start to swell, and it, like Bill said, it could take up to hours before it does that.
So just a quick set of numbers here. A typical foul ball when it's hit off the bat will go 100 to 110 miles per hour, and a fan seated 60 feet away has 0.4 of a second to react. That's how quickly the ball is coming at you. Now, that's not talking about a pitcher.
That's when you're even paying attention.
When you're paying attention,
Yeah.
absolutely. So
Right.
so that's a little issue there.
Let me tell you something that I think I haven't told you guys the story, but my son must have been 8 to 10 years old. He was out at a pool party with a friend's house, fell down, hit his head, just on the pool there. Called us and told us that he wasn't feeling well, so we brought him home. And we weren't sure. He slept, which was not a good idea. Slept. The next morning, still feeling bad. We took him in, and he didn't have a concussion. He had meningitis. We found out that's what it was. We were fortunate that he got hurt. That he got hurt. I mean, stuff like that doesn't happen. Somebody was watching out for us, obviously.
Yeah.
But that happens a lot. Does that happen a lot?
Yeah, and so going back to concussion, concussion is defined as any loss of consciousness. And quite often, this loss of consciousness could be literally milliseconds. So anytime there's any type of loss of consciousness, that's defined as a concussion.
So are there stages of concussion?
Yeah, there are stages. There's different stages. I think there's 4 stages of a particular concussion. But again, we're dealing with the head, like Mike mentioned, the swelling, stuff that you can't physically see that you need an MRI or a CAT scan for. But again, when you're getting hit with an object that fast, that hard, it's time to go get examined. Don't wait.
Well, and some of the issues that you have too is that everybody's just going straight with being unconscious. I mean, you as a family member know what a baseline is for your child.
Sure.
And so what happens is it doesn't have to be as extreme as being unconscious, even if it's for seconds. I mean, if all of a sudden the individual that's been struck in the head is having confusion, having problems speaking, doesn't know where they're at, starts vomiting, there's different things that you can look for at that point too. Another issue that people don't think about, because we always talk about concussions or head trauma, is that the response from whatever object strikes the front or the side of the face or even the top, it's going to move your head backwards. So it can also cause a spinal injury, a back injury, stuff along those lines too.
I know we're talking about baseball, but brings to mind boxing. You see the MMA stuff getting blitzed.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting with MMA being a newer sport. That the athletes are now starting to retire. It's going to be interesting to see with regards to head injuries, like the boxers. I was in Vegas a couple years ago and ran into Ernie Shavers, and he was sitting there signing autographs and stuff like that, and it was like talking to a wall. His speach.
Well, you see it most of them. It's the way it is on most of them, unfortunately, but that's just the way it is.
And now the MMA, they go to basically the unconscious stage, so it's going to be interesting to see here in a few years, because these guys will be old enough where they start seeing the signs, symptoms, exactly how dangerous a sport that is. And something else I want to mention, where at a baseball game you get struck by a ball, there's something that's typically going on at the baseball game with alcohol. So you got to throw in that factor as far as people drinking beer, and like Sean mentioned, what is their baseline level of consciousness? So there's a number of factors we need to look at when examining.
Have you been to an event like that where it's happened, getting hit by a ball? Not you guys, but seen it?
I've seen it, across the stadium or what. And again, it's a traumatic injury.
Oh, sure. So you've seen it a lot more recently because for whatever reason you just see it more. Now I've seen it. You said to mention the girl. I think that's happened 2 or 3 times this year so far. And now the discussion of the
fences
yeah.
and like I said, there's 3 teams right now that have it.
Mm-hmm.
It was, and I just said pick this up off of ESPN when I was watching it. There's a couple more teams that are highly thinking of it, and then they discussed that it's possibly going to be a regulation next season.
Right.
I'm curious to see what the fan reaction is going to be, because that's going to kind of block their vision, and they're not going to be able to get their glove out and try to catch that ball. So I'm kind of interested to see what their reactions.
Well, I think it's going to be it's going to be a negative perception right away, but then eventually it'll go away like everything else, because you won't have the Steve Bartmans chasing those balls and getting in the way or falling over. I'm sure you saw the Dodger guy who fell into the field and he got escorted out.
Yeah.
So that happens too. Anything else athletically? Football, basketball, not basketball, but you still see them in basketball. They run into each other, collisions in the outfield, things like that.
And these are, good size, 200, 230 pound athletes, basically muscle running into each other at, 10, 12 miles an hour. It's a big impact.
We talked at the top of the show about the helmets. Look at the evolution of the baseball helmet. Now you've got, before you just had a little plastic or fiberglass helmet on your head. Now you got ear guards, you got the chin guards where they wrap around to your chin so the ball doesn't get your throat.
Well, that goes back to, you know who the player was that started that? Some sports trivia.
Who?
Steve Yeager. When he was catching the Dodgers as far as the throat guard.
Oh, yeah.
Got hit in the
I was going to say that. I was going to say that in terms of, he was talking about helmet, but throat guards. Now they're all matted. They're all the way through. Even the umpires, remember they just had the shield, with the little mask here.
Yeah.
Now they're guarded up too.
They're guarded up, and again, it all goes back to something happens or occurs,
right?
Instead of forefront thinking that, you know what, you had talked about at the beginning of the show with the helmet. We didn't wear helmets, and again, people getting hit. Well, we need to maybe put helmets on.
Sure. I wonder when the first helmet. Sean could be our Google guy today.
I will take care of that while you guys are chit chatting. But one of the things that we're talking about evolution and anything safety wise is because when you take a look at athletes from 50, 60 years ago, we're talking about completely different groups of folks. I mean, you give 10, 15, 20 years and they're twice the size, twice the speed. I mean, you can take a look at, and I know we're not talking about NFL right now, but you take a look at the college football players and you start talking about having them in a 4-1, 4-2, 4-3, 40 for the running backs. Now you've got linemen that are 325 pounds, 6'5", and are running 4.4 40s. So that means instead of them just kind of tiptoeing down the field trying to keep up, I mean, they're moving side to side. So, you got to put the safety equipment in there, and you also have to take a look at how the pitching is and everything else like that. Some of the, there's a reason why you don't see aluminum bats in pro baseball, and that's because it actually extends the speed and the length of the ball, whereas in these pro baseball players are only using wooden bats, and it's still coming off there pretty hot.
What was that defensive lineman this year? Sean was talking about it. He ran just over a 4.3 40 in the combine this year. He's one of the top defensive linemen, but 4.3 at 280 pounds is quite fast. I weighed 230 pounds at 6'2" in high school, and I was the biggest guy on the team. Now, I'm small.
Oh, yeah, sure. And the speed and all that.
Speed, strength.
Well, you see the quarterbacks. Arizona had a quarterback back in the day, I want to say about 10 years ago, who had a few concussions and still stayed in. I can't remember his name right now. And then Anu Solomon eventually had to quit football because of his concussions. Yeah. I mean, it's just common. When you heard about the Junior Seau situation, and I'm sure there have been many since then, or before then and since then, but that's probably not a surprise to you.
No, and they're tying more and more with research into Alzheimer's and dementia and stuff like that with these concussions is the effects. Again, it's not something acutely where you're going to see signs and symptoms the next day, the next week, the next year. We're talking long 15, 20 years down the line that we're seeing these signs and symptoms of head injury.
Which leads me to another question. You guys, if you had kids who played the sport, football or otherwise, would you allow them to play? And that's part of the reason why I think football.
Well, I've got girls, so it wouldn't have mattered. So
no, but still, would you have?
Yeah, I think so.
And what about you kids? My kids played soccer, so my goalie, he eventually had to stop, and he played college. He got a couple of concussions. They said, if you had another one, you're done.
Yeah.
So he just got out.
Yeah, and that's nice, because we're starting to pay attention and count the number of concussions. Like I said with Joe Namath, he was talking about the number of concussions he had. And back then, you got taken to the sidelines. And it was just basically ammonia is what these smelling salts were. And next play or two, you're back in. And they definitely didn't have the helmets or the type of protection we have today. So
or the protocol that you have to go through now. Yeah, yeah.
So a little bit of research you were talking about. You wanted to know what was going on as far as they called them batting helmets back in the day.
Yes.
They went back as far as 1905. They were very primitive when they did that. They revised back into the 1930s and to 1950s. They actually had a fatal beaning of the head. Ray Chapman in 1920 with his protective headgear. So in 1956, the National League actually came around and said you're going to have batting helmets, and that's really the start of where that came from.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. How did it show what it looked like? Probably kind of similar to what they were back in the day when we played.
So there's 1939.
Kind of like what we used to wear as kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you look at softball, not only they're wearing batting helmets, now they're wearing face shields and the guards.
Well, you saw what happened to Karanko,
right?
Last year or the year before, when she got hit and the ball stuck in her face in her face guard, and she suffered a concussion anyway. With the helmets and the guards and all that stuff.
Yeah, just the force.
Just right.
Just the force of the ball. And that didn't really touch her head. I was just
the
impact. The impact of the ball striking that helmet.
Sure.
Well, and people also have a misconception. They think when they're talking about concussion that you actually have to strike the actual head. What ends up happening is, why the NFL is doing what they're doing now as far as safety. You can't take a shot to the head or unprotected individual when they do that. I mean, we have a hometown individual here that was very tough in the NFL, played for U of A for a few years, and they've got actual rules in place because he was such a hard hitter.
Chuck Cecil?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the guy's an incredible football player, but I mean, I know receivers had their head on a swivel when it came to him, but there's a lot of rules that are put in place because of that. And so the issue that you have is it's like anything else. They make things they make things that try to protect you a little bit more than the average thing. Well, then you think you can go a little bit harder.
Right.
I mean, you wouldn't have seen the hits that are done in the 80s and 90s had it been leather helmets because you're dishing out, but you're also receiving. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like the boxers that hit each other at the same time. They both end up on the canvas. Well, I mean, I just went to our wonderful Skulls game at the end of the year, the last one that got them into the playoffs. And I'll tell you straightforward right now, they got a kid from the other team that got hit and went unconscious. He was face down for probably 8 to 10 minutes, didn't move the whole time. And as soon as he got hit, the first thing I said to the crowd there is like, he's sleeping. And he was. And I mean, they took care of him. But the point is we protect and protect and protect. And with gear, and just like we talked about in 1905, they were just basically using ball caps and leather helmets. And now you got somebody that's throwing a ball 110, 115 miles an hour at you. And if it has a foul tip, I mean, we were talking about the umpires and the catchers that now have the throat guards. It wasn't because the catcher couldn't catch the ball. They had the glove right where the ball was supposed to go. The bat came around, tipped off that, and went right in. So you're taking about an 80 mile an hour shot to the throat. That puts people down. So.
Yeah, no question. In fact, I've been watching a lot of the MMA, like I brought it up earlier, and boxing recently, and these guys take some major hits.
And they get on the ground and it's.
You're wondering how the heck they get up.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. How the heck do they get up? And they do, but then, like you say, 5-10 years later,
Well,
they don't know how to stop.
Muhammad Ali. Look at how articulate he was in the 60s and early 70s and towards the end. I mean, we're going to find there's a lot of brain trauma that's going to be associated later on. I mean, you have the CT stuff that's coming on in the NFL. Some of these folks that we knew were the people we grew up with are now having problems. I mean, they can't take care of themselves. They can't speak. They're forgetting to eat. They're forgetting to take, just normal everyday thing that we take for granted. And they're only in the league, 5-7 years, and then they're out.
Welcome to Doom and Gloom Hour. Eye on the ball. Yeah. I'm here with Bill Spurbeck, Sean Kimble, and Mike Balta of CPR to You. It does sound kind of miserable. We have to change the name of the show. But we've seen it all. I mean, we've seen it all. I remember seeing the best fight I've ever seen. I've seen some great ones with De La Hoya and Mayweather and things like that. I saw one at the Del Sol. Two guys beat the crap out of each other for 12 rounds. Mm-hmm. They didn't fall. They just stood there toe to toe. And I'm thinking, how is this humanly possible? Yeah. And they just did it. I could imagine after the fight and maybe 2 days removed from it how they felt. But people take some beatings in the sports.
Yeah, and they're again getting stronger, getting faster, and hitting harder.
Mm-hmm.
And You look at these MMA guys. Example is they get these flyweights. These guys weigh, 105, 100. Oh, they're small. Well, go take a punch from one of them. You
Sure.
see how
Yeah.
small they are.
Dynamite comes in small
really
packages.
amazing.
Yeah. And especially when you're fighting against the same size of man.
Man, yeah.
Yeah.
Sean had just mentioned Chuck Cecil is. We had lunch with Chuck at one of the fire stations about 6 months ago. Nicest guy you want to meet.
And you'd never think that he was
no.
that guy.
No,
No,
He-
you
but
would not.
you could see in the intensity. We're sitting at the table having lunch and just watching his eyes but nicest guy.
Missile.
But
Yeah.
but you can't believe it's the same guy that
No.
is just waiting to take
I think
that.
I don't know. And Chuck, we've seen each other every now and again at the football field, but what, 5'11", 6 foot maybe?
Yeah.
160, 70 pounds maybe? Because he's in great shape, but he's
Yeah.
a thin guy now, just a thin dude. And you're thinking, really? This is the guy? But you wouldn't want to, the hell
Well,
no.
It's I'm pretty good friends with Teddy Bruschi.
Yeah,
Don't want to be on a football field with him off the field.
right,
Gone golfing and
right.
hanging out and stuff like that. The nicest, mellowest guy you want to meet.
And we'll go there on this side of
Sure.
the break with him because he just suffered
Yeah,
another
next-
concussion.
yeah,
We'll talk, or not a stroke. I'm sorry, and we'll talk about that because he is another kind of like a favorite son of Tucson,
Tucson, yeah.
and we'll talk about that on the other
Okay.
side of the break. Hey, welcome back to Eye on the Ball here. Let me remind my guests that we are on YouTube. You can find this on YouTube, so all your dance moves, will be on there, I think. And the great Bob, thank God you're not on the show to see your dancing moves. Thank you very much. We have Bill Spurbeck, Sean Kimble, and Mike Balta from CPR2U talking about a lot of different things, concussions, strokes. Now we're going to go with a stroke. One of everybody's favorite sons in Tucson, Teddy Bruschi, suffered his second one. Is the first ones, obviously we know first ones are bad, second one's worse?
Well,
third,
yeah, it depends on the type, the level, etc. There's people that suffer strokes and you can never tell they had one, and then you get just like a heart attack. The first one's bad, the second one's even worse. It kind of progresses, and so Sean had just looked up. Teddy actually suffered what they call a TIA, a transient ischemic attack, which is basically a blood vessel that gets blocked,
mm-hmm.
and so the oxygen doesn't get to the brain. And what's kind of unique about the TIAs are you can have people that have dozens of them in a couple hours, where they're sitting here talking to you normally, and boom, that vessel becomes blocked, partially blocked. They lose the oxygen in the brain, and so they start showing signs and symptoms of a stroke. 2 minutes later, they're fine. So anytime you deal with anything in the brain and the heart, obviously dangerous, and they do progress. As the more you have, the worse it gets.
Mm-hmm.
And
Very
again, I don't want to diagnose, or I have no idea really what transpired, but
Very preventable, though? Or preventable?
yes, strokes are a little bit different than the cardiac. With cardiac, you can exercise, your diet, and stuff like that. With the strokes, and there are different types of strokes. There are strokes that actually cause a clot that blocks the oxygen. Another type of stroke will actually, the vessel will rupture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there are different types of strokes, but anytime you suffer anything like that, dangerous, and again, calling 911 and getting immediate care. There's a medication they give in hospitals with strokes that's kind of like liquid Drano. It's called TPA, where it actually goes in and blocks they call it clot buster. It busts the clot. So again, anytime you're dealing with anything with the heart, the head, immediate attention.
Yeah.
And again, don't wait till after the baseball game to go get checked out. If you get struck by a baseball,
Go.
You need to go.
When in doubt, go.
Go.
Yeah.
And don't drive yourself.
Yes,
And Sean will
please.
tell you, and Mike will tell you, and I'll tell you, is that you get people that are having chest pain, and wife finally talks the gentleman to go into the hospital, but I'll only go if you drive me, and so we get dispatched 10 minutes later to the side of a road because now he's in cardiac arrest.
Mhm.
So
no, you guys scared
Call
me last
911.
time. The last time you guys were here, you guys scared the crap out of me.
Yeah, that was the doom show.
And
Yeah,
actually,
yeah.
I've done some work since I've seen. You guys know this. I've gone to see some people about it. So
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
good.
Yeah, no, I'm starting
Everything-
my healing process,
yeah.
Good.
mentally and physically.
Yeah, well, today it's nice with medicine. It's all that stuff is once you suffer something like this, the quicker the care, the better the care.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, a
And
year
it's all
from
about
now,
being informed too. It's
and
kind of being informed.
Yep.
Yeah, you guys scared me straight.
But something to mention is that WebMD is not your physician.
Oh yeah, don't do
I'm
that.
having chest pain.
Well,
okay,
people
let
do,
me
right?
Google.
I know
Oh
they
yeah,
do.
let me
All the
Google.
time.
Let me Google.
I'm
and
guilty
find
of
out.
that.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of that. What symptoms do I have today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you a funny story about that. So, you see commercials all the time on TV, and you don't ever really know what they're about, but what they do is you got to take this medication. It'll make you better. It'll make you better, and then it'll give you side effects. So I'll tell you a funny story about my ex-wife, and I was making dinner one time, and they were going all over this, and they were telling the signs or symptoms for her to be looking out for, and I already heard what the medication was, and she just flat out said, she goes, "This is it, I've got this one." I said, "You don't have it." And she goes, "Oh, because you're a big paramedic guy." And I said, "No, it's for prostate cancer, and you don't have a prostate." So I mean, that's, I know you appreciate that in the other room over there, but it's one of those things that the side effects are worse than that. Thank you for that. Yeah, the side effects are actually worse than the actual cure for the issue. He sit and says, "You have these 3 symptoms. Well, these are the side effects," and they list 25 up to including seizure, coma, death. But the big thing is it's okay to be a little bit informed, but don't live off of WebMD.
What they say, or the WebMD, or you'll take a nasal spray. One of the side effects of this nasal spray is you'll get a nosebleed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you see those commercials, and they'll cure this, but they'll mess up a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So
the side effects are longer than the actual commercial.
Yeah, if you have dry cough, but this could cause chest pain, difficulty breathing, or rash.
or suicide. I mean,
Yes.
everyone is suicide.
Suicide, yeah.
Holy moly! Just kind of live with it. Find a therapist. I guess I don't know.
Yeah. Get a
Yeah, you guys are scaring me. I'm not sure if this monthly thing is going to work.
check up.
here.
Well, wait till we talk
You'll
about
be the healthiest
psychiatric
person
med-
alive once you get done.
I will be. I'll be thin. I won't be good looking, but I'll be thin and healthy. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I mean, if anything out there, I mean, I know that we were trying to keep this on the baseball thing, but when it really comes down to it, if you're having some stuff that doesn't seem right, get a hold of somebody, let them know.
Yeah.
I mean, the WebMD stuff has caused a lot of people to delay, preventative care or, definitive care. And so what happens is if you wait, so the TIA that we're talking about, the transient ischemic attack, is kind of a forewarning to something that can happen. It can give you stroke-like symptoms because there is a temporary blockage, but that's the time to go into the hospital so they can start doing preventative care at that point, much like a heart attack you guys talked about last month.
But let me say this too, though. You might have some of the symptoms, and you might have some of the symptoms, and feel okay, or feel in your mind you're okay, and you go to the hospital and you're okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of a wasted trip to the whole hospital.
Yeah. I'm having chest pain. We get to the hospital. All of a sudden, you don't have chest pain
You're
anymore.
fine. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of
Right.
like, and then you get the bill and you get $5,000. What the heck? I was
Yeah.
okay.
Well, but see, let's also address that too. So you go in with stroke-like symptoms. You tell them this is what happened. I mean, this is how I normally speak. I mean, here I am, Steve, and I'm very articulate. And then you get there and you say, you're saying, yeah, I don't know what was going on for a little while there. I couldn't speak. I couldn't feel part of my body. And they're not going to look and go, oh, you're fine now. Take 2 aspirin and call us in the morning. It doesn't work that way.
Sure.
There's other tests that they can run and do some follow-up stuff. I mean, they're gonna take a look at your lipid levels. They're gonna take a look at different things that could have done that, and maybe they bring that down, and just that alone lowers your potential for having a stroke or a heart attack.
Yeah.
Actually, Sean, they would have said, I've heard your show. You do mumble a lot, Steve, so you're normal.
Yeah, exactly. We found your baseline, and you're not far off it right now.
And so here's an interesting story:
Right.
I was done working the streets, and so I had taken a position at UMC here in the emergency room trauma. And I woke up one Monday morning, and I had terrible nausea and vomiting. Terrible. No chest pain, no nothing. So I went back to bed, and it continued on till Wednesday. Or Wednesday morning, I finally called the emergency department and said, hey, do you have a bed available? Because I wasn't going to go take the time and sit in the emergency room. Yeah, come in, Bill, we'll take care of you. So I got there, and there's a medication called Zofran, which gets rid of the nausea and stuff like that. They gave me some IV fluid, and U of A being a teaching hospital, you get these newer physicians or residents that do every test in the world, and thank God they did. When you're having a heart attack, the heart releases an enzyme. It's called troponin, and so that becomes elevated. It's normally not in your blood. So they did the troponin, and my level was 4 times of what it should have been. Saying I was having a heart attack. So my wife shows up, and they said, well, we're going to take you and cath you. We'll do catheterization. I said, oh, no, you're not. And my wife stood up and said, oh, yes, you are. And thank God, because my vessel was 90% blocked. And the vessel is blocked. They call it a widowmaker for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, not everybody's going to have the same signs and symptoms. Like Sean had mentioned, if you're not feeling right, get checked out.
Well, Mike, if you remember, we talked about this in the last time you guys were here.
Mhm.
That what's that medication?
Troponin.
Yeah. So why don't they just do it all the time?
Because
The
they
cost?
do. No, it's not the cost. It's just a simple blood test. But the point here was, over the years, right, in any profession, you get a little lackadaisical.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I was at UMC, where you got residents, right, that are training to be emergency physicians, so they're going to do every test in the world.
Sure.
And thank God he did, because I had no chest pain, no different, the typical signs and symptoms. I had none of them. All I had was nausea and vomiting. And I remember his name was Chet Roken. Said, "Hey, we're going to go in."
Well, that's my point. Let's say for a second somebody like me goes in not feeling well, yada yada, but he feels good enough not to be at the hospital, but he goes anyway. And I'm just here because I'm not feeling well. And they take that test. Wouldn't they
The
take
troponin,
that?
yep.
Wouldn't they take that test right away? To
No,
me?
No.
not unless you're saying I'm
No.
having.
That's my point. I mean, why
Yeah.
not? Well, if you're sick, you take this. If you have maybe a potential heart attack, take that or
Well,
take the blood test for that.
Kind of going back to my saying we were talking about before the show, God is great and life is good. Thank God Chet was there and he pulled that, because probably 2 weeks later I'd have been dead.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of the answer to your question is, and this is a whole nother discussion that we are not going to get into a CPRDU as a group, but there's protocols that they do in the hospitals, and they make determination by what the insurance companies will pay and what their
Okay.
levels are. And we can't really speak to how much that test is. It might be as simple as when you get your labs drawn, when you go in for whatever, and they stick the needle in your arm, they draw a little bit of blood into a tube. That may be very inexpensive, but the thing is that in this day and age, with everybody trying to save a penny here and there,
Sure.
they've got to actually go through and justify why they do what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And so he must have hit a baseline criteria that said, yeah, let's go ahead just for fun and check the troponin levels on him, because he does have nausea and vomiting that isn't consistent with what his signs or symptoms are. So they ran that test on him. In this day and age, the issue that we have is that we can go in with a laundry list of stuff you want to do, and they're going to look
Right.
and kind of go, I have to be able to justify that. If not, then the hospital has to pay for that.
Yep.
And if the hospital has to pay out of pocket, you're not at that hospital for very long.
Yeah.
I'm not talking the patient. I'm talking the doctor that makes those recommendations. So that's kind of a little bit out of our scope. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, if, like we started this off, if you're not feeling well, you think that you might be having some of these issues, go get checked out.
Get checked out.
Yeah.
You guys are the happy bunch, aren't you?
Talk about insurance
Yeah.
companies and how much control they have. We talked about last week about my condition that I had.
Right.
I was in the cath lab getting ready to go in to get cathed, and insurance company called back to the doctor and said, stop, we're not going to cover it. And they were getting ready to put me under. They had me all prepped, ready to go in, and insurance called the doctor back and said, stop the procedure, we're not going to pay for it.
So what happened?
I stopped. They were getting ready to put me under, and they had to send me home.
Yeah, he lost his hair.
But
We live in a weird time, don't we?
Yeah.
Yep.
Unfortunately.
Yep. So I mean, it's all about.
Well, it was nice knowing
it's
you
about
guys. You guys, this is our last trip back.
Well, we should probably be talking to John C. Scott when we get these political discussions. And
But anyway, we got way off
It's,
topic.
it's my job to try to keep us back on track, but that's why
Yeah.
it's
Yes,
not in our
yes.
scope.
Sean
So let's
keeps
kind of
us
go
on
back
track.
in where
Right,
we need to
right.
be. So
Right. Just talk more about sports then. Let's talk more about sports. So when you guys go to games, like me, you watch, it's a job for me. People think you go have fun, go to watch games. And I kind of do, but I watch because it's work for me.
Yeah,
I have
sure.
to watch angles and story ideas and blah, blah, blah. Do you watch and see when things happen?
yeah, I'm
Absolutely.
kind of paying
Absolutely.
attention. Yeah, it's just kind of natural for us to kind of watch our surroundings and.
We look
and
for the
what's going on.
exits. We look for
Yeah,
everything
yeah.
like that. How we're going to, if we have to evacuate, how we're going to evacuate. Look at the different areas of egress and
Who's sitting next
and-
to you?
Yeah, who's sitting? Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You got a 650-pound guy walking up with a big bucket of popcorn. Maybe
Yeah.
I'll move out a couple rows 'cause I don't feel like doing CPR today, or just-
Well, you know what I'm saying. You guys
Yeah.
watch it, people
Oh, yeah.
getting hurt,
yeah.
Mhm.
things differently. This is an accident waiting to happen,
Yeah.
yada, yada.
yeah, the football game I was talking about, it was a home game for the school that I helped coach, and I was just one of the assistant coaches on one of the lower levels. I wasn't with the varsity coach, but I was at the varsity game as a varsity player on our team that got hurt. And I was the first one out there. It happened 30 feet from me, so I took 3 steps out, and he recognized me from years that I coached him prior to that. And I came out, and he goes, "My leg hurts." And I looked down, and I turned to the trainer coming out, and I had worked with him. He was also a firefighter. And he says, "What do we need?" And I said, "We need a splint, and we're going to need to transport." And so he turned around and grabbed the stuff, and they had a doctor on site and took a look and got him in there. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I was at the Sugar Skulls game a couple weeks ago and watched that kid got hit, and I just from the angle he got hit and the type of hit he took and the way he landed, I'm like, he's asleep.
Yeah,
you just know.
Yeah.
And what's nice is another proactive example is now in Tucson Youth football this year. In years past, only one person had to be CPR first aid trained. Now, if you're involved at all in the program, whatever level of coaching you're doing, your cheerleader coach, everybody has to take a CPR first aid class, which I think is great. I mean, what
it's
happens
very
if
smart.
what if that one person that's CPR trained or first aid trained isn't at practice that night or something? So
or he's the one involved of being hurt.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's, as a community, we're really getting proactive. Another thing we're involved with is the KVOA swimming.
The swimming, right. That's been on for a long time.
Yeah, this is our 3rd year being involved, where we do 10 free classes a month, May, June, July, and August, and donate the training to the community. Last year we did just over 1,200 people in the community that come to class.
Not that you need to do it today, because I don't want you to do it. You don't have to do it. You had a free guy call in.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Did he go?
Yeah, he called. I talked to him.
Did he go?
I don't know if he attended, but I did talk to him after the show.
Oh, okay, cool. So
Yeah, no, he never called back.
No, he did. I talked to him.
I know you told, but he never.
he's never showed up to do
never
the.
showed up. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's how important it is. I'm going to be. My son's who's a medic in the military says he's going to get me involved in this.
Well,
too.
we told you. Come over to the office anytime, Steve. We'll give you a free CPR class.
Right.
After you buy Mama's pizza for us.
Yeah. What's that? The 1, 2, 3. What's the say? What's the song?
Staying Alive.
Staying Alive.
1, 2, 3.
What's funny now is there's a new song out there. I don't know if you heard that Baby Shark song.
Oh yeah.
No.
That's actually, yes, it does. It actually, it's actually an American Heart Association. But yeah, that Baby Shark.
Oh,
I know that song because my wife sings it to our grandchildren.
probably
every
sings it
night.
to you to be quiet.
I actually got a shirt that says Grandpa. I think I wore it the other day, right?
Mhm.
Grandpa Shark.
Yeah, oh man, I feel sorry for you, Sean and Mike. You have to deal with this every day, don't you?
Every day.
We have an internal mute button, so
Yeah.
it works out just fine.
Yes, I gotta find that when he calls me or he sends me notes.
Now this is a recorded line, right? So when we go to court,
Hey, thanks guys for joining me. We'll see you
Is it
guys
that
at
time
least
already?
once
Wow.
a month, and it goes very quickly. Thank God. That
God is great, life is good.
yes, yes. We'll be talking to you a lot in the next few months
next month
about shows like this, just about sports and stuff.
Yeah, and if any of your callers have particular subjects they'd like to discuss,
please call. Yeah,
call
please call
in and
if something happened to them,
we like their stories and
right. We did
Good or
have
bad.
that. Yeah, we had that the last time. Some people called
Yeah.
in, and you guys gave some good advice.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so I'll hold you to it because you guys scared me the first time, and I'm doing my due diligence and becoming a better, healthier person.
healthier person.
Yes, thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Thank
Steve.
you.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, the CPR to you, my regular sponsor now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Here, we'll come back on the other side here at 10:30 The Voice, trusted local news and talk.